No, don't leave. Don't leave. Stay with us. Nah, jokes. Imagine if I started doing that. Nobody's allowed to leave. Hi, everybody. My name is Jay, CEO at Imagen Insights, and this is...
Phil Clark, Head of Paid Media and Digital Marketing at Canada Goose.
Phil is amazing. Please connect with us on LinkedIn because we need new friends, so that would be amazing. Guys, I said don't. No, jokes. So at Imagen Insights, we have a community of 37,000 Gen Z in 111 countries around the world. Our clients are like Amazon, Apple, Google, and Nike. We enable them to crowdsource qualitative insight from our community within a matter of minutes. Canada Goose are a client of ours, which is always wonderful. But we're not going to do that things. I've been seeing it all day where agencies kind of bring a client up and they're like, let's just talk about how amazing our relationship is. We're not going to do that. We're actually just going to talk about Gen Z and mental health.
Yep.
Which is fun. But first, let's talk about who Gen Z are. So Gen Z, many of you will know, but they're aged between, depending who you ask, but aged between 13 to 27 years old. They are three key characteristics overall. The first thing is they're digital natives. So they grew up with digital technology. Unlike millennials, me and Phil, you're a millennial, right? Okay, I do want to make an assumption. You might have been Gen Z. Unlike us, we had to adopt technology. Gen Z have grown up with it. They know technology now to use it. It's through their DNA. The second thing is that they are co-creators. With millennials, it's all about putting me on the podcast. Ask me the questions. I'm important. Talk about me. With Gen Z, they just want to create cool things with cool people. A great example of this is TikTok. On TikTok, you look, the videos that do really well are the ones where creators are content creating and actually doing stuff on the back of each other's content, which is great. And then the last thing to mention is that they are activists. If you see anything that's being, anybody that's leading the charge on any kind of cause, it's normally Gen Z that are leading the charge. Whether it's Black Lives Matter, the fight for gender equality, the fight for what women could do with their bodies, it's normally Gen Z that are the loudest and leading the charge, and we absolutely love that. But we're going to talk about their mental health today. So Phil, I'm going to jump in with a whole bunch of questions, but my first one is, what are the challenges and opportunities associated with targeting Gen Z in marketing campaigns?
You summed up this generation so well, you know, the generation that asks questions, the generation that have so many nuances, right? And it's incredible how a couple years ago when we all started thinking about Gen Z, what do we do about this great unknown generation that most of us as marketers are still sort of millennials or above, and it's the great unknown, this big mysterious generalization. And it was painful to me how they became generalizations, Ed. And it was just, okay, brands put so much work and energy and effort and money into understanding personas and their target audience, and then all of a sudden there's a conversation of Gen Zs, they're the customer of tomorrow, how do we target them? And you're throwing a TikTok ad onto the top of your campaign and not really understanding that demographic targeting is an old thing, and we know this, but they just threw it back into the mix when we were trying to understand how to target this younger generation. And we didn't understand that, you know, when you break down your target audience into passions, into anxieties, into behaviors, into likes and dislikes, the same thing is true of Gen Z. We've patronized or risked patronizing this incredibly smart and inquisitive generation by putting them all in one basket and going back to pure demographic targeting for the generation that understand more than we ever did about marketing.
And I think one of the key things for me is you were mentioning a second ago there, and actually just go straight into my second question, so I appreciate you for that, thank you. It's almost like we planned this. When it comes to marketing Gen Z, what are the benefits and drawbacks of a segmented approach versus a generalized one?
You know, every segmentation, testing, optimization, breaking down audiences has had nothing but a positive impact on the work that I've done as a marketer and as agency side, brand side. Being able to segment, test, optimize is great for performance. And it also creates more relevance for your audience and who you're speaking to. You know, I'm a strong believer that we should market with intent. And your marketing has to be intentional. You should always ask the question of why. Why are we trying to speak to this audience? What are we trying to make them think and feel and do? Not just for the sake of Gen Z and the fact that we need to think about the future. We have to ask why, and we have to be intentional about what we're doing and stay relevant. And segmentation, in my opinion, is the only way that we can actually achieve that.
And I think specifically in my space, in the market research space, a lot of times, specifically Canada Goose, when they come to us, you want to know right down to the nth degree who are these people, and you want to know everything about them. And I think that's really, really important. And the thing I always praise you as a client for is that your commitment to that, even when it does get tough, because we know as you segment more, you're going to end up with a smaller group of people that you're going out to. But for you, it's so core, and I think I just want to just praise you for doing that, because I think a lot of time clients want to do it, and then when the pool gets too small, we panic, and then we go back to what we're used to, which is generalized content for sure. So, third question. You said we weren't going to get through these. I think we're actually going to smash through some of these, so we're doing well. How can marketers effectively navigate the digital... These are long questions. How can marketers effectively navigate the digital landscape to reach Gen Z audience without compromising their mental health? So how can we engage this demographic without compromising their mental health?
This is something that's really important to me, and I'm glad that there was a mention earlier that it's been brought up a few times today, because it's always stuck out to me when I've come to events like this, that it's just not high on the agenda. You know, it's not really spoken about. And when I tell people that I want to talk about this and bring this to the fore, the first question that I get asked is, what's the solution? And, you know, there's a couple of ideas and responsibilities and journeys that I think we should take as marketers. But number one is that we start talking about this and start realizing that we have a responsibility to address this. There's so much energy, rightly, has gone into sustainability in media, sustainability in marketing. But I think actually as marketers, we can have a far greater impact on mitigating the detrimental impacts of mental health on young people specifically than, say, manufacturing or distribution can have on sustainability. So, one is not more important than the other, but this has to get its time and its space. And again, segmentation, I believe, is a great first step and first approach to ensuring that you're being intentional and relevant with how you speak to people. I have pushback from partners like Meta and Google every day in the quest to move to a completely automated approach to marketing. Give us your budget, give us your KPI, we'll hit that and it will do the rest. But actually, then I'm losing control. And we've all moved away from non-disclosed agreements with partners, and now we're sort of zombie walking back into a complete black box of automation and targeting. And once you've hit that KPI, and before your budget is spent, what then is happening? How many of your ads are being run relentlessly past audiences that are, adding to the doom scrolling impact, bringing people deep into a hole and really having a negative impact on people's mental health? It's twofold, because if we're more intentional, if we have more control over the segmented and the targeted and the message that we're putting in front of different types of audiences, it benefits the end user, where they've got more relevant content in front of them, but it also benefits the brand. It's going to have a positive impact on your performance when you've got more control over what you're saying and who you're saying it to, and allows you to optimize more than an automated model will do. I mean, if you look back a couple of years ago when we were having this similar conversation about sustainability, and there wasn't a huge answer, and lots of people had ideas, but there wasn't great answers. Today, vendors are coming up to me left, right and centre with really smart ideas of how not only we can reduce our carbon footprint, but also benefit performance at the same time. And I feel like if we give energy to this conversation now, we can find ourselves in a similar position for the impact of mental health in a couple of years.
And I think the interesting thing for me is when we approached Phil about, okay, we want to do a talk at MadFest, what should we do a talk on? It was actually Phil that came to us and said, I want to do this on mental health. And I think that's important, because I think a lot of the time with the fight between, earlier was speaking about the fight between revenue and wanting to actually do good for women. It was one of the talks given by Dove earlier, and actually want to encourage women around their beauty and who they are as human beings. There was this tension, and the lady that spoke on stage, the woman that spoke on stage, her specific thing was saying, actually, I don't think there needs to be a give around that. And one of the things that encouraged me is when we said, we could talk about anything you want. And you were like, I want to talk about mental health and social media, and specifically in your space, because you are playing in a space where, as you just mentioned a second ago, a lot of time brands are adding to the mental health issues. So for you to say, actually, I want to see how we can talk about this and bring this a lot, I think is important for sure. And from your perspective, what would you say if brands were, say for example, you're maybe not as senior as you are, maybe a little bit more junior, and it's important to you Gen Z's mental health is important to you, what would you say to somebody in the room that is a little bit more junior but wants to put this on the brand's radar? How can they do that?
I think it's an inherent skill of younger generations to challenge the status quo. And that's the key. We have to challenge the status quo. Don't just, with closed eyes do what senior leadership is telling you to do or what the big media owners are telling you what to do. Ask questions, challenge the status quo. That's the key. That's the ultimate takeaway. When I first started in this industry 10 or so years ago, I really didn't know what was going on with my data, with my information. Every time I spoke near my phone, every time I opened an app on my phone, and I came into this industry, and it was incredibly eye-opening. But if I hadn't, I don't think I'd be aware of that. This generation now, they know more than we ever knew. They're asking questions. They've seen behind the curtain. And I would say to anybody, with all the information you have, challenge the status quo and ask questions, because that's the step, even as us as leaders need to do. Step number one is challenge the status quo, which right now is a bit just full automation. Lean on the machine learning. These tools are only ever going to be as good as the human that sits behind it. And we need to make sure that we're questioning that always.
Yeah, and I think a good way of doing that as well, just as an encouragement, if this is important to you, a good thing to go to senior leadership with is just data. If you can have data and say, actually, okay, here is the actual effect of what this has on this demographic, and if we can be a brand like Phil is doing with Canada Goose and to stand out and say, actually, we want to stand against this and actually help Gen Z to have better mental health, and this is how, that's important. And a great way of doing this, we've got a whole bunch of free resources. If you head to imageninsights.com, you just go through, enter your details, and you get free access to our tool. You type in mental health, and there's a whole bunch of data in there that you can just steal. If you don't have to say it came from me, you can just steal it, use it, say that you came up with it yourself or you found it somewhere else, but just take that data and use that as a weapon to go, actually, okay, this is why it's important, because this demographic cares, and if we can be ones that can lean into this and show that we care, that as their spending power increases, we're going to be one of the brands that they're going to be spending with. Because a common misconception right now is a lot of people think that Gen Z aren't spending, but their spending power is increasing to 33 trillion by 2030. So if you can engage with this demographic now and show them that you care now, by the time their spending power increases to where their values currently are, you'll be the brand that they want to spend with. And doing that and being smart about that now is a great way to get senior leadership onto it.
Yeah, here's another thing as well. I'm sorry to any Gen Zs in the room, but the truth is you're not actually that young anymore. Gen Zs are much older now. They're no longer the customer of tomorrow. They are the customer of today. Now we're speaking about Gen Alpha. Who are these? Who is this audience? And I saw a post from you on LinkedIn. This is the first generation that have influencers as parents. This is a generation learning from the generation who ask all the questions and have all of the information and are used to receiving that information exactly when they want it. We have to be ready for this. There's two schools of thoughts. One is we can wait until there is a need, and the consumer and the audience and our audiences are telling us this is important, and until you nail this, we're not going to pay attention to your brand. Or we can just get ahead of the problem, because it's absolutely coming. It's on the mind of this generation of Gen Z, and it's absolutely going to be tenfold on the mind of Gen Alpha. Mental health is at the front of people's thinking now. It was even just 5 years ago, it was not talked about. This is really important, and as much energy that we're putting into sustainability and have been for a few years, we should need to be getting ahead of this issue, and we have a real responsibility, which is the other school of thought, right? Do we need, and for many CMOs, CFOs, the answer to this is going to be absolutely yes. Do we need the consumer to demand it from our brand before we take a step? Or can we just do what's right and what we really have a responsibility to do, rather than being complicit in what is a very real problem? And my school of thought is the latter. But even if you take the former, we're moving towards Gen Alpha. That should be the conversation now. And as you say, they are the children of the generation that have the information and are asking all the questions.
And I think that you alluded to the LinkedIn post that I posted about Generation Alpha being the first generation to grow up with parents as influencers. And if we take the case study of folks like Justin Timberlake, Britney Spears, Lindsay Lohan, and folks like that who were that for our generation, I say ours, I'm old, but for millennials and older, for us, they were like the first like quote unquote influencers, like big influencers who knew on a global scale. And you see what it did to their mental health. So now imagine that at scale. And I do this talk when I'm traveling around the world, and one of the things I say is I use that as a case study to go, actually, I foresee that for Generation Alpha, their mental health is going to be affected similarly to what we're seeing with the Timberlakes and the folks like that, who, for them, they were thrust into the limelight without any guardrails, and it just went absolutely nuts for them. And I was in Georgia last year. They just got locked out of the Euros. It's a shame. But anyway, I was in Georgia last year, and when I was there, I was standing next to this child. He was 5 or 6 years old, and his parents were speaking at the conference. And somebody walked up to this child and just walked up to him and was like, "Oh my God, you're so-and-so from YouTube." And this kid's like 5 or 6 years old and just didn't know what to do, was just completely overwhelmed by this grown woman in his face, being like, "Can I have a photo?" So on and so on. And in that moment, I saw that interaction, and I thought, wow, now imagine that at scale, because that's just in Georgia. So that child will be well known in Georgia, but outside of Georgia, maybe not. But now imagine that globally. We've got thousands of children that at scale don't have a guardrail around it, where the parents are saying, actually, you know what, this is a good way to make money, but what about this kid when they're going to school? They're out with their friends in Tesco's or whatever it may be, and they're getting approached by this. And this is another side of mental health that I don't think is really spoken about, and that's why I was glad we were doing this.
Yeah, it's a scary thing when you say that and you think about the young people and how social media is having a role in their lives. For us, for my generation at least, it's an opportunity to share your life, you know, and many of us are sharing our children's lives from birth. So when they reach the age of having control of their own social media accounts, they're already 13, 14 years deep, you know, in having their lives shared in this platform. It's going to have, you know, significantly is not the word, an infinitely greater impact on people's lives than it's having now. The generation that picked this up, you know, this wonderful new technology where we can stay connected, it now controls and owns, you know, everything we do, the decisions that we make. And we have to get a grip on this. And I don't think, you know, we're not going to change the world. You know, we're not, as marketers and all of the wonderful things we're doing with sustainability now, we're not going to change the world, we're not going to save the world, but we can make a significant impact. And we have to believe and get behind that for mental health as well, for the sake of our young people. My son is 4 years old. It's become much more of a deeper thought process for me now. I've still got some time. I feel like as we all get older and our children get older, this won't be something that we can choose to talk about. It's going to be something that we absolutely need to deal with.
100% agree. Also, I have no idea how long we've got left. Laura, how long do we have? 2 minutes. Wonderful. Look at that. I'm a professional. I know exactly what I'm doing. It's because there was no timer, so I was like, crap, we might be over time. Is there any questions? Can we do questions from the audience? You're like, I don't know if we have any. Are there any questions from the audience? If not, I'm going to ask one more. If you don't have a question, it's fine. I'll carry on talking. I'm very good at this. So my last question to you is, before everybody leaves and walks off, don't forget to connect with us on LinkedIn, people. We love you. Appreciate you. Are there any specific strategies or tactics that you found to be particularly effective in engaging Gen Z while also promoting mental health practices? Is there anything specifically that you've done other than segmentation, but actually with the concept?
You know, I'll touch on what we were speaking about earlier. When 2 years ago, when it was the buzzword Gen Z, how do we speak to this? We thought we'd cracked it with the word authenticity. Oh, they love authenticity. Be authentic. But you have to have something to be authentic about. If your authenticity is actually shit scary or dangerous, then don't just jump on that. You can't create authenticity. You know, you have to have something to be authentic about. And again, it's like understanding who's the persona. Yes, there's of this younger generation. Who is the type of this younger generation I want to speak to? And what does authenticity mean to them? Don't just create something for the sake of it, which has been, you know, out the pitfall of targeting Gen Zs for now. You know, understand what you are authentic about before you get on that.
Love that. Perfect answer. A wonderful way to finish. Please connect with us on LinkedIn. And if you want a whole bunch of free insights, head to our website, download the data. You don't even have to quote me, like I said. Steal it. Say it was yours. It's all wonderful. Appreciate you. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Jay.
Cheers, Jay.
Really, really important topic.